Today we tackled the long block. Today's video is brought to you by CamaroCon. If you guys are interested in attending the West Coast's largest gathering of Camaros and Firebirds from all generations, come on out to Las Vegas Motor Speedway October 12th and 13th. Hit up CamaroCon.com and learn more information about this show. What's going on, guys? Matt over here, Lethal Garage. I think this is part 4. So as you guys know, we left off short block, done. We were missing pieces. Pieces have been acquired. There's a lot more in this bag than I anticipated, but we got it. So, cam, heads. We're gonna show you some cool stuff with the valves. We recorded it the other day because my heads already have valves and all that stuff on there. So we went to Mike's house and took an old heads, some really old heads with some leaking issues, and shot a video between some of the tools that you have options of. I'm gonna go ahead and jump to that right now so you guys can check it out. As you guys know, my LS7 heads already have the springs and everything, retainers, all that stuff on them, so we're not actually replacing the springs on those, but I felt like the long block video could not have not putting springs and retainer caps and all that stuff and talk about what is all in your valve train. So that being stated, we're gonna do that. And one thing to highlight here is we have old heads here that are getting refurbished, and we're gonna be replacing all of the upper side of the valve train, so springs, retainers. What else, Mike? Anything else?
Springs, retainers, valve seals, seats.
Yeah, so seals, seats, all that great stuff. And we'll show you all that stuff. So we're gonna go through it all right here. But please keep in mind, this is not for the LS7. This is a different set. What is this, an LS?
It's a truck motor.
It's a truck motor. So it's a 6.0 that this is going on. It's nothing crazily special, but new parts. And we'll be able to show you that. And one thing I wanted to highlight is to change the springs. LSM, or if you don't know LSM Racing Products, they have sent me a tool that should help remove the springs easier or better, or I don't know how to really explain this, Mike, because Mike is the mechanic. Mike has used many tools, from air tools to hand tools to other contraptions out there on the market, and I'm sure you have your favorite gizmo to do these things.
Yes.
So without really getting into that, we could talk about that after, and we'll have Mike actually use the tool, see what he thinks about it, because LSM's like, hey, we got this tool, it's basically compatible with all the LS motors, super easy to use. I'm like, hey, send me one over. I'll, let me know how much it costs and we'll test it out. So we're doing that. So let's open the tool and test it out. Yeah, let's see what's inside of it. Stickers, already 10 extra points for me. Uh-oh, my invoice is in here. See how much the tool is. Not bad. So 219 bucks for this tool. Obviously this tool is for someone who's constantly building motors. They do have a little directional guide in here for the tool. But again, LS1, LS2, 3, 6, LS7, LS9, yeah, spring compressor. So you can actually see what it looks like, but who wants to see a picture when it's actually here? See, dude, they gave me a ton of stickers. Dude, this is 5 horsepower, 10, 15, 20, yeah, 25 horsepower we got here, boys. Okay. Really good packaging. And here's the tool. So this is definitely a CNC milled tool. It's got some weight to it. Looks like it's stainless steel. So at least it's made out of quality. So let's cut this tag off and see what this tool can do. Okay, so we Mike's been having a little fun today. This is good. If you can't have fun building motors, then why are you doing it, right? Right. So Mike's been having a little fun. We used the LSM setup on these, well, this first half, I guess it would be quarter, because there's another side. Whatever, semantics. Messing around, checking it out. There was a couple key things that popped up when doing it. The hardest part is when putting the keepers back in on 2 sets. Mike found using a magnet on one side and then able to finagle the other 2 on the other was the best route to go. But as far as having them both down and keeping it at the right level, like we tried different height levels and stuff, maybe seeing if the keepers would catch and not fall in and stuff like that. That was the only hard part. Like, as far as how it works, you get 2 springs per side. You can pull it all out. It's not in the way. just like they highlight. So tearing it down is pretty simple. I would say the only hiccup was the keepers going back in.
I'm trying to do 2 at a time.
Yeah. So, and it's not like it's not possible. It's just you got to be a little creative, at least in our methods, unless we're missing something. I read over the little pamphlet thing a few times, and they don't really say anything. It literally just says, and reverse the process. So, so what we're gonna do, because Mike, he uses this currently. He loves this. It's a good tool. It's like 30, what, 35, 40 bucks maybe, roughly, give or take, brand new. This is gently used. And we're gonna do a test. So obviously Mike has many years and much use out of this tool. It's a single spring at a time tool, but I told Mike, let's put it to the test. Let's do 2 with this tool and 2 with that tool. And it's not just replacing the springs and the keepers, but it's the seals, the springs, and putting the keepers back on.
Yeah, the retainer's all nice.
The retain, yeah. So yeah, so we're gonna do that, and we're gonna time it. So I'm gonna pull out my handy dandy watch with the timer, and he's got that tool off. This tool's obviously off. And which one do you want to do first? You want to do your tried and true way, or do you want to do this one first?
We can do this one first.
Okay, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Okay, here, I'm gonna put this where.
Yeah, set that over there.
I'm gonna put this where you can't see it.
Yep.
How about that?
That's
So, ready, set, go. Just so you guys could see, I did actually start the timer. No cuts. This is a solid edit. So no pressure.
Don't yell at me.
So with the LS7 tool, you just line it up on the springs, just like that. Use a 7/8 socket. Doesn't take too much effort to get it to compress. Mike and his magnet trick, getting the keepers off. Now you don't have to pull the whole tool off to get the springs. You get it just loose enough to where the springs are free, and then the tool actually just turns to the side, which is really cool. You can pull everything out. Yeah, let's see how we are in time. This is going to show everybody how, if you bill by the hour, how much time it actually takes.
Oh no.
Did you just get...
I'm gonna say, well, we're at 27 minutes right now.
Nope.
27 is just a nice round number.
47 is also a good round number.
Why you bring my age into this?
Wait. You're not that old.
There.
It's a shame you don't have the air compress tool. You know, the air compress one that I've seen you use before?
Oh yeah. Yeah, those are really simple and easy to use. But that's more of a cylinder head off the motor type tool.
So you can see what we're talking about, holding the keepers in place. Mike's just using a small little magnet for the one side, and then he'll juggle that side with his fingers. And this is the interesting thing with the tool. While they were center when you put it on, when you put the new springs and stuff, their spring rate is obviously slightly different from what we put on. So you do have to adjust to make sure the keeper is clear and go right on up. So we're gonna call that done? Are we gonna count taking the tool off too?
Uninstall. Uninstall.
Okay. Tools off.
Tools off.
We'll call that 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad.
Now, we will attempt Mike's tried and true way. Now, again, I don't even want to know how many springs you've pulled off with this, but as you can tell, it might be like 2 or 3.
Yeah, at least.
So we'll cut, and Mike's gonna get his air compressor set up so we don't drop a valve, and yeah. Okay. So right now we're debating. So more than just springs need to be done to these heads. I'm just gonna leave it at that. We hooked up the air compressor, make sure valves didn't drop, and well, let's just say the air pressure is a little bit low.
The intake might leak a little bit.
So I think we're gonna redo these ones. So Mike's saying he'll just take them off, put the other springs back on with the seals and all that stuff. So that way we're actually doing it in the same position to make it as fair as possible.
Sure.
Yeah. We got the old ones back on, full replace. You know, the one thing, you're about to be in trouble, but you didn't pull the seals on that one. So there's a little more to do that you didn't do. But anyways, here we go. So tools off.
Tools off.
In his hand, just like the last one.
Yep.
Ready, set, go. Don't want to throw him off his game. You almost done? Is that done?
That's it.
That is 2:59. You were 31 seconds faster. The tool itself, here, let's talk about it. Mike's tool, you've been using that for years. That's no excuse for the other one. Which one felt easier to use? Knowing that you've used that one a ton of times, being Mr. Master Mechanic.
I've always found this one easier to use. The biggest problem is trying to get my fingers and the keepers into here. So if you got really big hands, then you have an issue.
Yeah.
As far as if you've never done this before, that's probably a lot easier as long as you can hold the magnet and have a little bit of patience when you let everything back up. That's going to be the big key to it, is holding the keepers into place, especially if you're inside of an engine bay doing this.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. We have free, easy access standing right here doing it. So, I mean, do you think either of these tools changes being in the car, knowing that you've pulled valve trains and stuff?
That would be a lot easier inside the car because I'm not sitting with a ratchet holding it down, trying to get the keeper in.
Yeah. So there's a couple plus and minuses to both sides, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that tool it definitely makes it easy, but I'm very proficient with this.
There you have it. So we've kind of talked about the tools up front. So there's a couple options for you on what you can use if you guys are out there looking for things to do. We were talking about an air compressed one, as Mike was saying. That's kind of for one that's off the car.
The cylinder heads have to be off. And then
yeah, and that's a lot more expensive.
It's a $400.
So let's just throw that out the window. All that being stated, let's go through the actual individual parts that you're going to be installing into a head, and yeah, we'll go from there. Parts of your valve train. Now I promised I'd go through the individual parts. As you know, in your head, that's a head, sits on top of your beautiful pistons. It allows air in, air out. Yay. Because without air, there's no combustion.
Typically.
Yeah, anyways. So the parts and pieces of that, one, you have a valve. So this is an actual LS7 valve. Is this titanium?
It is titanium.
Oh, that's so pretty. This one's kind of messed up. As you can see the little drawing on it. His machine guy was like, maybe we want to get into it. That being stated, this is a basic LS3 setup. So you got your spring, you have your retainer. So this is actually the top, and the bottom is built into the seal. This is what you call a one-piece setup. So it basically sits there, that goes there. You have these beautiful keepers that slide in the top that lock it into the top of the valve. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Now, if we wanted to go for an upgraded setup, this is the Brian Tooley 660 Platinum kit. So you get a double spring, you get an upper retainer and a lower retainer, and your seal is separate. So this is a two-piece. And the reason for that is the inner spring won't clear a one-piece setup. So it sits on there nice and tight, obviously with your keepers again up top. and that locks it in. So as you saw in our video earlier where we were testing the 2 new tools, you basically compress this to get your keepers on and off, because these are a wedge shape. If you guys are not familiar, here I'll try to set these up and show you. So as you can see, hopefully you can discern, it's a lot skinnier than it is up top. So the top's wider, bottom's skinnier. That wedge allows your top seal to hold in place on the tip of the valve and keeps it in place and keeps it from dropping and grenading your motor.
Yes.
Yes.
That.
So there's all your individual pieces, and we'll get into the push rod length and the rockers and all that stuff back on the LS7.
Right.
But in this instance, I just wanted to go through this aspect, talk about these parts, and show you some of the different tools that were on the market. So hopefully you enjoyed this part. So hopefully the head aspect, valve train, all the parts and pieces for that were clear enough in there. But now let's get to getting the cam in and yeah, all the other stuff. Let's do it. What is the official term for this piece right here?
This is the crank gear of the timing set, and then this out here is the actual drive for the oil pump.
Perfect. So Mike slid that on and hammered it in place with his big muscles.
I don't know about that.
Is there any specific? It basically lines up, right? Like there's a specific way it goes on
There's
there.
a keyway and everything.
Yeah, it's all
where it goes
keyed,
on
so
there.
you can't mess that up.
Well, you can, but it's hard to.
So we got a beautiful cam, and it's actually really pretty. Why does this cam have like that copper finish versus the other ones that we've had? I mean, what's the difference here?
Well,
I mean, just for my own knowledge, I guess.
this is a billet core from Cam Ocean. It's forget the.
And if you guys are wondering what kind of lube that is, it's assembly lube, or as Mike likes to call it, yeah, assembly lube. So lubing the cam all up. This is the first time the cam's gone in. Well, this is the first time any cam's been in this block.
It's got all the cam specs on the back of it.
I don't know if my camera can. Oh, there it is. Kind of. Yeah, it is a big cam.
Yep, grown by the fine folks at Cam Ocean.
So in sliding your cam in, it's just a nice little rotation. You want to make sure you're not bumping and grinding it against the walls, because as you clear the bearings, it's going to get a little loose until it gets to the next bearing set. And I can't really see inside the. Yeah, I guess you can kind of see in there a little bit as it moves forward.
You got all the cam bearings.
Yeah, you can see Mike here. He's just slowly twisting it.
Slowly twisting it.
You're almost there. Bam. Cam is in. Did you just deliver a baby?
Feels like it.
Timing chain. Timing chain. The timing chain dampener.
Yes.
I mean, could you put a motor together without that? It would
Yes.
just be slapping around.
Yep. It'll just gives a little more slop to it.
Yeah.
This controls the timing a little bit better. Keeps the timing chain from really getting out of place.
That's good. It's like a $5 product. Hey, and just so you guys know, it comes with bolts. I bought this and then the bolts. Did not need the bolts.
You bought the wrong bolts.
They were the bolts. See, GM is king of having part numbers for everything, and then the bolts are completely different. Is that the lock that keeps the cam from moving?
Did you hear that, Eric? He blamed you.
I did. I blamed Erik, Paradise Auto. He was just going by the numbers. By the way, huge shout out to Paradise Autos. All these parts they got quickly within a day or two, and some same day.
Yeah.
They're really good over there. But this is the is it the lock plate, or what is the official term of this plate? Because this with the other, isn't it these doohickeys?
So these are the bolts.
I'm still learning, guys. I apologize.
These are the bolts that hold the camshaft gear to the camshaft. And then this little plate has little pieces that fold over and hold the bolts in place. Because of the larger camshaft, extra vibrations, they're prone to coming out. So we want to make sure that they don't come back out. These this plate here, this is actually your cam plate. So this is what actually keeps the camshaft in place. So it rides up against it, just like that. And then your cam gear, when it comes on top of here, will show the Torrington bearing and everything on how it rides in there, so that it doesn't create as little friction as possible.
Nice. So these are T40.
Yep.
And I actually had the tool. Mike forgot his pretty snap-on one.
And those don't require a lot of torque, because if you over torque them, they will never come out.
That's not bueno.
LS motors, remember we were talking about the dots. Here is your other dot on the upper camshaft sprocket.
Yep.
And then your crank sprocket. You can barely see it just out of the corner there. And basically what you're after is to line those two up. Now this is what they call a hex adjust system. So you slide this into here, and then there's a little dot there. And then it has an A and an R for advance and retard. So if you were to get really technical with it and everything like that, you could put a cam degree wheel on this and completely degree the camshaft in.
Nice.
Because we're using a cam motion, it comes with a cam doctor card. So where this peg is at is exactly where they say it's at. So if this was a generic off-the-shelf grind, I would probably be a little more concerned and probably really want to degree the camshaft in and get it straight. But because of the equipment that we're using, it's really not necessary. So this is the Torrington bearing. We brought this up earlier. Basically it has a smooth surface on one side and then a nice round surface on the other side, and there's little ball bearings inside of here. Not really ball, but more of a needle bearing. So it has a needle bearing down inside of there, and that allows that to roll around like that. Basically, oh, I almost put it on backwards. Pops on there just like that, and then just rotates nice and easy all the way around, so you create as little friction as possible. Alright, so what we're going to do is get that put into there, and you should have your bolts ready already. Just kind of work that into place. A tooth off there. Take these guys, put them into there. So this mark here in the middle, this is your neutral advance. So there is absolutely no advance or retard there. So usually there's a little bit of sloppy play there. So usually you just want to have the same amount of slop to both sides. And then that is about perfect. Foot-pound for these. And then these are 18 foot-pound. Usually all the accessories around here are all 18 foot-pound.
And if you're wondering, before I hit record, Mike's talking about the torque spec on all the bolts.
Oh, I was
25s, 18s. Yeah, torque sheet. It comes in really handy. Mike has built this an LS7 probably a gazillion times.
I've done at least 2.
Yes. So he knows
this
all
one,
of these numbers.
This one and mine.
So before we fold the bolt locks in position, you're turning it over, just see how it feels and looks.
Let me make sure that we are completely lined up, and I don't think we are.
You don't think we are?
Yeah.
He needs more light.
Yeah, I'm a tooth off. Aha. Okay. That's why you check them.
Is it a tooth off?
I made a boo-boo.
So at this point, Mike's gonna undo everything he just did, move it a tooth, and then put it all back together. I'm not gonna show all of that.
So basically, we'll get behind there.
So because I don't have good pliers, Mike is mad at me because folding the lock tabs in is difficult. We'll crank up the light a little bit so we can see. Now it's valley cover time. So we have our lifters and our lifter trays. One thing Mike wanted to highlight, one thing he likes to do, and it might not necessarily be every mechanic likes to do. He likes to have all the holes going the same way. So uniformity, right? So a lot of people will soak these in oil. What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
I've had no difference in either way.
Perfect. So we've gunked them in assembly lube because you want great lube. But if you guys didn't know, this is a hydraulic style lifter. They sit in the trays. Obviously, these ride along the cam. There is, where are the rods?
Push rods.
Yeah, the rods. Push rods. I was going to say push rods. I was getting to them. These are going to sit on the opposite side, pushing up and down on your rockers, controlling your valves.
Calling it Billy.
Calling it Billy. So, but these actually slide in really easily. Once you get them pushed in the trays just go on over. They're held in place with one bolt. And Mike likes to two-hand it every time.
It's a lot of roller.
Is that one too much for you?
Well, they're not always all lined up, so you got to kind of wiggle them around a little bit.
Wiggle them around so they can get to the wiggle stick? But these literally just slide right on in, and again, they're held in place literally with one bolt per tray. So LS motors are pretty uniform, you were saying.
They're pretty uniform as far as the bolt specs go. All the smaller M6 bolts are usually either 89 or 116, and then you get into your M8 bolts and things like that. And your M8 bolts are going to typically be between 18 and 25 foot-pounds depending.
Nice.
But that's mostly what this motor consists of.
Pretty straightforward.
It is.
So these are inch-pound, 116,
inch-pound,
and 4 bolts. Simple enough. So at this point, we're gonna get the cylinder heads on. Yeah. But we need these beautiful little pins.
The dowels of pinning.
The dowels of pinning that keep the heads from sliding off the block. All right. Something like that.
Basically, this locates it.
So we're using Fel Pro.
Why don't you ever take stickers from my house? I have a lot of stickers.
So is there a top? This is a dumb question. Top and bottom?
Read.
Oh, front. Nice. It actually tells you.
Look, he learned how to read in California.
So what's the difference between like these and the ones that are on our LT1s that seem like they're like cushiony and foamy?
Basically, they're both MLS gaskets.
Okay.
They have a little different material on them, but the reason that we went with these is because they compress to 41 thou, which gives us a decent quench to the cylinder head. And basically, the quench is where the piston comes up and basically closes the gap on the cylinder head.
Nice. So these are like 4-layer. And when
and it's 0.041 compressed thickness.
And they're one-time use kind of product, right?
If you find anybody who's trying to reuse head gaskets, just walk away.
Sweet. I wanted to highlight that because it's important. So we're going baller status on our bolts. We have secured a box of ARP bolts and studs. Now we don't necessarily need a full bolt and stud kit, but it was available, so I picked it up. Why not? I mean, we're not running boost or anything on this motor. It's going to be all NA. But I guess it doesn't hurt to have them, but it's kind of a thrifty item to be spending on. They're like $350, so
yeah,
or $300 roughly. Okay, at this point, it is time to put on some cylinder heads, right? So I have a set of LS7 cylinder heads, decked, imported by West Coast.
Yes, it's a stage 2 from West Coast Cylinder Head, and then they've been decked 45,000.
There you go. So stage 2, West Coast, good to go. They are used, but I cleaned them up. They look pretty good, nice and shiny, kind of. But let's get them on the car motor, not the car. Cylinder heads don't go on a car. I just stop. So yeah, we'll put them here. Now that we got the cylinder heads in place, we can start getting nuts and washers out. So we have all the ARP bolts and nuts and they're all greased up and we're good to go. Now we gotta torque them down accordingly. Mike's got the torque wrench. Torque bolt, torquety torques. But that being stated, they give you a sheet that gives you all the numbers, so you can't really mess this up. Step 1, tighten nuts 1 through 10 to 25 foot-pounds. Then tighten nuts 1 through 10 again to 50, then 1 through 10 again to 70. And then just the top ones, 11 through 15 to 28. Why do the top ones have, oh, the little baby ones? That's why. Okay, I get it. So yeah, let's fast forward through this. The motor looks a little bit different. As you guys saw in the last video, we ran into the issue of they were, wait, too long or too short?
Too long.
Too long. Mike was not happy with more than, it was a little over 1.5 turns, right?
Yeah.
So that's not point. And why, can you talk why that's bad?
Too much preload. Whenever the motor will pump up, the hydraulic lifters will pump up, and then as soon as all that happens, the valves start to hang open and you start to lose power that way.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen. These rods sit on top of the hydraulic lifters and they're rolling on the cam. And that's basically what's controlling your inlet and exhaust.
Right. This transfers the motions from the camshaft to the rocker arm, or to the valve.
And that's all controlled by the beautiful timing that we set up over here. And
you could be like a Ford and have 27 cams in it. This is the operation of what one cam does.
in putting the rockers on, there's a difference between the intake and the exhaust. Mike, what on this specific one is, I mean, I guess they're different on all motors, but that being stated, how do you know which one's which besides looking at a part number and knowing what you're looking at?
So LS3, LS7 style cylinder heads have an offset intake rocker arm and a straight exhaust rocker arm. Now this is more common what you see on your LS1 or an LT1, where they'd all be the same straight rocker all the way across. The L92 cylinder head and the LS7 cylinder head were the only two to have the offset intake rocker arm, and that's to properly align the push rod to the valve tip versus where the intake runner actually runs through.
And then again, the lash cap is on the titanium valve.
The titanium.
The titanium.
Titanium.
And that's because titanium doesn't like friction. So it's literally setting these up and getting these all tightened down. Again, we've mentioned this a couple times in this video, but having a torque spec sheet is very important. All data. Did you say Jegs? Jegs sometimes has sheets?
Jegs has got stuff.
Yeah.
Pace Performance has got stuff up.
So find what you need. I guess there's one thing to kind of highlight, and I guess we talked about it in a sense, but the rods themselves, you know, the ones that we had before, they were too long.
Yep.
So, and we determined that based upon the torque rating, and yeah, I guess we've already addressed that. So I'll just cut this whole section. So rockers are in place, torqued down, and I think that's all the critical parts of this. So I am going with Manton valve covers. So I actually had some custom LT covers made, and I made multiple sets. So I actually swapped those out, a set of those out for a set of LS covers. So those will go on there, nice and custom made from Manton. So I'll show you those when they get here. Outside of that, I think that basically completes the long block, huh? So there you have it. Long block's complete, minus the valve covers. Actually, even then, on a long block, is the valley cover on?
No.
Yeah, see? No. So we'll get into all of that in the next video. I think there's quite a bit of information here. Obviously, there's mechanics out there that have different ways of doing things. We are doing it the Red Barn Racing way in this build. So all of that being stated, big shout out to Mike, Red Barn Racing. If you guys are looking for anything to do with motors, builds, you want to make more power, give Red Barn Racing a hit up here in Southern California. Also a huge shout out to Paradise Auto, who has gotten most of the LS7 parts that we needed from GM side of things at a discounted rate. So hit up Erik at Paradise Auto. They have a lot of things in stock. They got a big inventory. So if you're ever looking for a part or something like that, hit up Erik. He'll help you get a good deal and the parts that you need. So that's all I got for now. Thanks for continuing to watch this motor series. Obviously, we still got more to do. Next up, oil pan, windage tray, front assembly, rear. Are we gonna do the rear? I don't know. We'll get to that. So until next time, see you on the road.